Yeah. Yeah, that's super cool. So what I'd like to ask you, David, and then we'll go to Q&A in just a moment here. So we'll get through as many as we can. And then if there's any super chats, obviously we'll take those first. So like in sum, David, like when you look at like memory theory in 1 Corinthians 15, like where does this in your mind like leave us in terms of like making a case for like the resurrection of Jesus?
Yeah. So in theory, I'd say this is the first major study to look at it. That's to say there's definitely been other things, so you don't always want to like pretend and try to blow up your trumpet too much. For instance, James Dunn's book Jesus Remembered covers the whole of Jesus' life, but does look at Jesus' resurrection. He generally looked at orality. There's been others like Dale Allison's book this year that uses a bit of memory as well. But yeah, by and large, though, I would say that memory approach hasn't been used for Jesus' resurrection much. And so it's interesting to be able to see what that sort of case would say for it. And I think the view that if you interpret the scriptures, and right now I'm not just thinking of 1 Corinthians 15, but the whole scriptures to think that Jesus raised God from the dead. If that had happened, then I think the disciples would remember it really well. I personally do think that happened, but I'm not saying that you can demonstrate and prove that. But in terms of memory, we're saying if that had happened, it's very likely that the disciples would have remembered that event very well. Whereas if you contrast that with other things, like if nothing had happened and the disciples just lied, or if they had experienced hallucination or swoon or something, that's not likely to have made a as long-lasting memory. And it doesn't seem to be consistent then with like how it's described in New Testament literature. For instance, like in 1 Corinthians 15 again, Paul says to them in about verse 3 that what he received, I passed on to them as of first importance. And this is to say that it wasn't a secondary thing, like it's crucial. Yeah, and it's not likely to have had that central position on the other views. But with memory of a bodily resurrection, it's likely to have been really vivid, long-lasting, made a deep impression. And so, yeah, memory theory supports the idea that Jesus could have been risen and it could have been remembered rightly by the apostles. I sort of steal from, I think in the last 4 years, Finding Dory came out.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was watching that with my kids. And over the credits, it has the song Unforgettable, which is not written by Disney Pixar. It's like an old song, but, they just sing it there. Yeah, and that occurred to me, you could use that same sort of logic with Jesus' resurrection. You could say that for the disciples, like Jesus' resurrection would have been unforgettable. It'd be something that experience for them that would have just been sort of burnt in their memories. And that's what we sort of see, that they become a resurrection community that goes about talking about it all over the place.